Hey guys, Buckeye Bar Guys. We wanted to thank you guys for tuning in to us here on Buckeye Bar Talk. Great show we got coming up today. We're really looking forward to you guys listening and watching it. But just wanted to remind everybody, just remember to subscribe to the channel, hit the all notifications bell, and that way, anytime a new show comes up, you guys will be alerted to it. And don't forget to like the video and comment on the video. All interactions with us helps us continue to grow, and we appreciate your support. Now to the show. Welcome back, everybody, to Buckeye Bar Guys here on Buckeye Bar Talk. I'm Mike.
And I'm John.
And tonight's date is Friday, February 9th, 2024. And got some big stuff that's, it's just like the never-ending news cycle of Ohio State football. You're supposed to be in the off season, but yeah, here we it's just like nuts now.
It never slows down. It's been remarkable this year.
Yeah, it's weird. Like it seems like the last couple of weeks is actually we've had more news than we've had, and like even. I mean, there was kind of stretches during the season that it seemed like we didn't have as much news as we have right now. So, I mean, that's kind of crazy, like, to think of. But, all right. So, first bit of things that happened, so early in the week, it was kind of reported that Bill Obrien was possibly a finalist for the Boston College job. Jeff Hafley decided that he had enough with college football and became defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers for the second time.
Screwing Ryan Day for a second time.
Yeah, I thought they were friends, but yeah, just kidding. They obviously are friends, but it's like, didn't do him any favors on this one, even though it probably is going to end up working out, knock on wood, but, we'll get that in a second. But so Bill Obrien was the finalist, and as kind of the week went through, Ryan Day had his press conference on Wednesday for, final signing day and all that stuff, and took a lot of questions about Bill Obrien. And at that point, it was kind of definitely, even though Obrien was at the school, it was definitely seeming like once you were kind of like listening to a bunch of different people that, the momentum was really heading towards the way that he was getting the Boston College job. I mean,
yeah,
him and Al Washington were the finalists for the two, and it just seemed like that, and not saying anything against Al Washington, but I mean, and I'm not saying Boston College wouldn't be necessarily a good first job, maybe.
Yeah.
But it just seems like that, I mean, if you had the choice between the two, Bill O'Brien's definitely your obvious choice. And it just seemed like they were throwing another name out there just to throw another name out there to make it look like that maybe they kind of cover them a little bit that things were, they were obviously working on a contract with O'Brien. So, and then we get to today, and O'Brien is officially the head football coach now of Boston College. So let's start there.
I feel like that was a kind of no-brainer. I mean, how I feel about him and Al Washington being the two finalists. I don't think that was really much of a conversation. You have to have a second name. There has to be somebody he's competing against. Bill Obrien definitely more qualified for the position from Boston. Nothing wrong with Al Washington. I mean, I don't think he's ready for the job. I think Jeff Hafley, the 1 year as a defensive coordinator where his defense did great, is more so ready than Al Washington, who's always kind of had above average units. I mean, I don't know. I don't think that the Notre Dame defensive line was anything special. I certainly didn't think our linebackers when he was at Ohio State was anything special. No. I mean, I thought that was more of a sum of the parts than what he actually contributed as a coach. And I think that became pretty evident in 2021. So I think it was more, I think O'Brien was definitely a shoo-in for that position. I think he'll do well. I can't believe that, they found a range that Boston College would be willing to pay for Bill Obrien, but that is what it is. So
yeah.
Bill Obrien had just got here, and I know Ryan Day is a smart enough offensive guy that I wasn't upset, hurt, whatever by the news. I wasn't too scared. Like, I thought Ryan Day could go find any qualified coordinator and we can make this thing go. Because I know he is a great mind. You need someone that knows how to call plays. So I thought we would be okay, regardless. But still, I was excited for the Bill Obrien news because that is a very experienced mind coming into Ohio State, calling plays, has called plays previously, been a head coach at many different places, been successful many different places. So I was excited for that. Wasn't too heartbroken to hear that he was going, and he had good reason to. So it was all okay, whatever. But it's wild because you just got the guy, huge name, coming to Ohio State. I don't remember what his contract was. You're paying him a boatload of money to be your offensive coordinator. He's supposed to be the guy to get Ohio State finally over the hump because he's calling plays for Ryan Day, and then it's kind of like gone, So
yeah,
definitely unexpected at first, but then if you really stopped and thought about it, he was the logical choice at the end of the day.
Yeah. And like you said there, as you were alluding to, there's good reasons. There's family reasons. I mean, obviously he's from Boston. His family's from Boston. His kid does have his one kid has medical conditions where he does have seizures. I believe they said every day. His, neurologist is in the city of Boston. Obviously the city of Boston is world renowned for their medical care. When you think about some of the big hospitals that are in Boston. So I got to imagine the neurologist, considering who Bill Obrien is, he probably is one of the best neurologists, definitely probably the best neurologist in the city of Boston, possibly in the whole country. So I can only imagine that, and I get that, if you have a really, 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 really good doctor, and I know there's really, really good medical care, obviously in Columbus and in the state of Ohio is, in more general, when you think about some of the big hospitals here, but if you have a world-renowned neurologist and they're right on your next door, it is hard to kind of think about, like, you got to go find a new doctor. So like I get that. Boston College makes sense for him. There's not going to be the craziest amount of pressure on him if he was taking a other Power 5 style job. So
sure,
it's a good spot if his ultimate goal is to be a head coach again. It's a good stop to go back into. Everything you said, I agree with. I was really nervous at first when all this news started dropping out. Like, I'm just like, and I heard it. I think it was on the Bucknuts show today, but it might have been on, because I've listened to a couple of them. And it was like, and this is kind of like the feeling I had. Is like, is Ryan Day, is this like a sign from God saying that he still needs to call the offense? Like, and so yeah, that was kind of my fear early.
He's not a bad play caller.
I know that, but that was my fear early in the week, before
all the time.
Before the press conference, I was really, and I texted you a couple times, like Monday, Tuesday, I was like really feeling it. I'm like, he's going to take this job back. Like, he's going to, and like you said, he was a great play caller. I have no problem with that. It's just that college football is becoming so, like, for a lack of a better word, ridiculous in a lot of ways. So
yeah,
his attention just has to be so focused in so many different places. I mean, you got recruiting, you got NIL, you got all this stuff with the transfer portal. I mean, he's being pulled in a million directions, and he's got and I don't care so much as that he was calling plays. Like, if he brought in an experienced guy, of somebody of Bill O'Brien's ilk, and they said that Bill Obrien was going to be, or whoever is going to be, the Monday or the Sunday through Friday offensive coordinator, and is going to run all the meetings and do every little thing and help Ryan out on Saturdays, and Ryan was going to still be calling the plays, I probably could get behind that, because I think that that's a lot of the issues, is that he just can't be in the offensive meeting room the whole week of practice.
It's just too much. It's too much.
And so, and they obviously needed somebody more experienced with the quarterbacks. I mean, I think that's,
and a more experienced voice in the offensive room.
Yeah.
Just in general.
Yeah. They
got a lot of young guys in there, and that's fine, but
that was sorely missing. So yeah. So if they would have brought in a Kevin Wilson type and said, Sunday through Friday, This man is doing everything with the offense, and Ryan Day is going to call the plays on Saturday. I could have got behind that 100%. I could have got there. Bringing in Bill O'Brien, it took me a minute, and it was nothing necessarily against O'Brien because he ended up really checking every box and stuff like that. It's just like, and I guess I was comparing him unfairly. I was thinking kind of like Sark's offenses at Alabama, and I didn't watch a lot of New England this year, so I was thinking like, well, Sark's offenses in 2020 against, O'Brien's offenses in 2021, there was a difference there. And I know still Bryce Young won the Heisman and all that stuff, and I get all that stuff. It was just different. It's not as flashy. So some of that was kind of like, it took me a second to get there, but then I got there. Once I'm like really thinking about it, well, okay, well, this is Ryan Day's offense. Bill O'Brien's really experienced. He did really good things at Penn State. He did really good things at Houston until that fell apart, at the end. And a lot of that is a lot of the mistakes college coaches make ahead of time is that they just want too much power in the NFL. It's the problem Urban made. It's the problem all these guys has. There's a difference building a college roster and building an NFL roster. Like, if you're not getting 5-star or 4-star recruits, like, it's like you won the lottery every day in the NFL. Like, you have to know, like, the journeyman that's begging groceries that like, hey, I need a receiver right now, and that dude can actually do this, and calling somebody up. So there's just
instead of trying to convert Tim Tebow to a tight end.
Yeah, there's things in college football that are just way different than the pros when it comes to building rosters, and so once I came through, I'm like, okay, I'm cool. Bill O'Brien's going to be a hell of an addition to this, and he's going to do everything I just said a minute ago. He's going to be the offensive coach, Sunday through Friday, but he's also going to call the plays on Saturday, and and it's going to be Ryan Day's offense, and they might add a couple things in that he's good at. So I was really, really, really cool about that. Then all this news started coming out, and I just started getting really nervous. I'm like, because I think after this many years with Ryan Day, he holds a lot of things in. He keeps a lot of things close to the vest in a lot of ways. And I think he gets frustrated easy in a lot of different ways now that you kind of like, he's not like Urban, where just Urban, like just, you could see the steam coming out of Urban's ears. And sometimes, and you just don't see that. I think Ryan's a much more introverted in a lot of ways and some of that stuff. And I just think that I was getting really nervous in his mind that he was just going to be like, I got to do this again. I got to do this again. I can't, I wasn't ready to turn this over to Brian Hartline last year. If I bring in another offensive player, if I'm not going to find somebody that experience, Bill O'Brien checked every one of my boxes. I'm not going to find that, blah, 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 I'm going to still call plays. So that was kind of getting me nervous and stuff like that he would start to bring in more stuff back onto him. Then Wednesday happened, and we'll get a little bit more into the press conference here in a minute, because I think there was a couple good things that were mentioned in it, and we'll talk about a little bit about this too in it, and we'll get a little bit more specifics about what he said about this. But he knew that he had to make this decision. He needed to find a guy, and he kept on saying, only if the right guy is found. Only if the right guy is found. And some people took that as like, well, that kind of worries me. Does he not have the right guys found? And then to me, it was completely different. Like, I started thinking about it immediately, and I'm like, he's going to hire Chip Kelly because at this point we knew Chip wanted out at UCLA. I think Chip was 100%
very public that he wants out at UCLA.
Like, I think he was probably the most surprised that they brought him back. Like, that's, it's like, God, what do I got to do to get fired?
Like, you promised you were firing me. What do you think?
I heard midway through the year I was getting canned, and I was looking forward to
I was getting fired. I read it on Bleacher Report. I was canned. What the hell?
Yeah. So I was like, he made a point to say, I have to find the right guy. I have to find the right guy. And I'm just like, okay, if Bill O'Brien leaves, I think he has the right guy in mind. And I think that's Chip Kelly. And it makes the most sense because it fits. Now, going into today's stuff, so O'Brien goes this morning, like, Chip Kelly, like, was literally the new offensive coordinator for Ohio State within the hour of them announcing that O'Brien's like,
I got a notification. Bill O'Brien accepts the Boston College head coaching job, working on details. And not even 30 minutes later, I get a notification. It was Bleacher Report, and it said Chip Kelly leaves UCLA, or Chip Kelly will become the new offensive coordinator at Ohio State, has informed UCLA he's leaving. So it was just that quick. So obviously this has been in the works for a minute, man.
Yeah. So, and he kind of was, I think he personally leaked it like kind of on Wednesday when he was just saying, it's somebody I got to be it's got to be trustworthy. I got to trust him. I got to trust him. Like, and like to me, I was just screaming Chip Kelly because even a lot more than O'Brien. Like, I think he respects Bill O'Brien so much that he trusts Bill O'Brien because like he knew Bill O'Brien brought the credentials. Like the whole that I have to trust him. I have to trust him to do this. I'm like, there can only be one really person. Like he knows Chip Kelly better than anybody. So onto the Chip Kelly stuff. So again, there's some negatives here. Obviously, Chip is. I think a lot gets made of how great Chip's offenses are, and they really. I mean, they are. They're really, really good. But I just at times, and I guess maybe some of the sourness that him at Oregon, that some of the physicalness and stuff, toughness thing that people have questioned Day over the last couple of years. Some of that stuff comes back, but then you realize what he kind of did at UCLA the year with Fry there and stuff like that. You think about 2022, and that was a very physical team. That was, I mean, the best rushing team in the country. So I think there's a lot of different new concepts that have come up. I think Ohio State's already made some improvements as the year went on to their running game to kind of, they want to be much more of a, we're going to go gap scheme, stuff like that. We might have thrown in some of the zone stuff in there. And honestly, I think Chip might even be a better caller at some of that stuff, that if they can get the line to actually do some of that stuff this year, and they have the two backs, I think Trey can do it. I'm pretty sure Quinshon can do it, that stuff. But I think they're going to go with the mindset is that we are a gap scheme team. We can run the gap scheme. They've done it, this year. They started proving it, and they might be able to sprinkle in a couple things. He's very inventive with running the ball, and I think it will be good for him because him and Ryan Day and Justin Fry, they're all on the same page, and I just think these guys are all going to kind of start bouncing ideas off each other's brains and pick each other's brains, and I think Chip will feel comfortable with Ryan saying to him, like, yeah, let's do that, but maybe let's change it up a little bit to do this. And same thing with Ryan. I think Chip Kelly can tell Ryan, it's like, yeah, that's dumb. Like,
well, I don't think there's going to be any problem with Chip telling Ryan. My concern is Ryan's not going to tell Chip to get his head out of his ass. That's because, I mean, that's a hard conversation to have with your mentor,
I get that, but I think he's on. I think a lot of the conversation as this offseason started that he's on his last leg. I think some of that is dissipated some because, about how good the transfer portal and the recruiting ended up being and just everything.
It'll get real nasty if it doesn't go the right way this year.
I think he still gets that. And I don't think he's going to have as much problem telling, Chip, like, we got to do something. And I think Chip's in the understanding of that. It's like, and I think Ryan Day, I mean, the dude's logged. I mean, how many hours has he logged in the last couple of weeks just in recruiting? He seems a little rejuvenated. And I think that some of the stuff coming off his plate, I think he likes the recruiting aspect. He might not like the NIL aspect and some of that stuff, but he has to deal with that. And I think he mentioned that, and we'll get to that in a second. Like we said, when we talk about the press conference, like that stuff's all coming with the territory now. And it's unfortunate for him and for a lot of people, but that's just life right now. I think Chip is probably they're just going to have kind of the mindset as they did with Knowles. And, it's kind of cool with the recruiting. It's like, it seems like they've kind of, and I know this has been mentioned on a few of the big podcasts and stuff like that, but they kind of have this group concept right now where they're taking several coaches on recruiting trips together. And it's like they're bombarding kids, with a bunch of them. And
yeah.
And probably I think that helps Knowles out on the defensive side if he can have Walton with him and LJ with him and, James with him, and, we'll talk about that here as we get into the press conference that, I think that benefits Knowles. So I think it's going to benefit the same with Chip. So I think that a lot's been put on him. Like Ryan Day probably was like, look, I'm the head coach. I'm the guy that needs to be out there busting my ass recruiting. What I need from you, Chip, is just have a damn good offense that,
Right.
we can go kick people's butts this year. And you know what? I might send you out on trips with Justin and Brian so you can go, because you might need to, let them do the recruiting, all the stuff that comes with recruiting. And you just come in and you tell the player at the end, like, this is how I envision using you in the offense.
Right.
So I think that's kind of a benefit for Chip too.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I texted you that, if anything, the downside to all this is a good side, of course. But if you do have a great year, you're probably losing Chip to an NFL coaching job, next year. So, but that's fine. I mean, that means good things happened.
I hope that, the NFL coaching jobs, obviously there's, as we saw this year, sometimes it takes a minute to get the college guys out of the NFL, out of college into the NFL. Some of that stuff might have lost some sour in him out. I don't think he's going to leave the Ohio State offensive coordinator's position to be an NFL offensive coordinator, especially if you surround.
I think so. No.
If you surround him with enough good recruiters, that the whole recruiting aspect and the NIL aspect is not on his plate, which I think he does not like. Obviously, that I think that, like he wanted to leave the head coaching job to go be an offensive coordinator in the NFL. So I think you saved yourself from that, like by making him the offensive coordinator at Ohio State, and you're maybe not throwing so much as recruiting on his plate because you've got other guys that can recruit and stuff like that. You just need him to maybe come in at the end of the day. And honestly, Ryan can probably do that probably even better than him. That I think we've saved him off that. The NFL coaching stuff, yeah, you could lose him in a year, but you might not lose him after a year. Like he signed for 3 years, that stuff's really weird when it comes to NFL coaching. And especially, it seems like a lot of these teams are trying to, if they're willing, it's like they're trying to give new guys, a lot of these places are trying to give new guys chances, as you see across the NFL, but they're already on NFL rosters or NFL coaching staff. So it's like, so
I'll tell you what, if Harbaugh has a good year at San Diego, or are they still in San Diego? I don't even know. If Harbaugh
that could be a
Harbaugh has a good year, man, they're gonna start going back to proven dudes. Yeah. And not that Chip is like overly proven in the NFL or anything like that.
But he has
a good head coach. He has lots of experience.
Yeah, and he didn't have a bad offense at the Eagles. I think his biggest mistake obviously came down to the personnel stuff. I think if these guys, the problem with the college coaches is they're so used to being the head honcho.
Yeah.
That I think they got to leave a little bit of their ego at the door, and they'll do. I think a lot of these guys. I think Urban would have done fine in the NFL. I think a lot of these guys would have done fine in the NFL. You just kind of have to leave some of your ego at the door and just be like, I need a personnel guy. Like I need an NFL general manager. You be a general manager. Go get me a roster. I can coach the roster. Like
Urban's problem why he would have never worked in the NFL is because you don't have seasons where you only lose one game in the NFL. Like that stuff would have just broken his brain year after year, and he constantly would have been shifting stuff around, firing people, whatever it would have been, because they lost a few games. So yeah, I don't know if Urban never could have got there. I think he's a good enough coach he could succeed anywhere, but I just think the losing part would have killed him.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. So yeah, for a lot of the reasons why Bill Obrien, was really happy about, I'm really happy with Chip too. And I think, and I might even be slightly more happy because I think these guys are all going to be on the cohesive same page. Where I think the biggest thing that was kind of worrying me about the Obrien hire is that I was just worried because Obrien, he definitely is a emotional guy that can get feisty, and I was wondering like if different things would not mesh at times with him and Day. That like, are they going to get like?
I think Chip could be like that too. I just think that it might be a better atmosphere that they know each other well.
Yeah, but that's my point. I think Chip really could be like
Chip
that.
Gets fired up too.
But I just think that him and Ryan already come on the same. They're already on the same wavelength. So I think that helps some.
Yeah.
So,
And then actually, for what I want out of the Ohio State run game, what I've been begging for years, I think you get that easier with Chip Kelly than you do with Bill O'Brien. So I am looking forward to that because I do think Chip Kelly and Justin Fry coordinating the run game, I think it will get back to, something pretty damn good.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll get into some of that stuff here because when we talk about the press conference, that is actually the first thing I wanted to lead into. We'll move into that stuff right now. So before we get into this, so it was signing day this week, so not an official signing because he's just a commit, but is the first name Noheen?
Yeah, Naeem.
Yeah, offered out of Alabama. I mean, Tim Walton right now. I mean, damn this man. Like, we thought we loved Brian Hartline. Now we have two lovers. Now we have two people that we just is absolutely in love with at Buckeye Nation. Like, what the,
I did love though that there was some Buckeye fan on, X, formerly known as Twitter, that he was questioning and concerned about Bill Obrien taking Tim Walton with him as his defensive coordinator at Boston College. It's like, these guys have never worked with each other. What are we worried about here? Or like Julian Sayan's going to go to Boston College to go be the starter. Like, Julian Sayan's the number one quarterback in the country. He is not going to Boston College.
And unfortunately for him, until the NCAA changes their rules, he's stuck here until
the NCAA doesn't do anything.
Yeah, but he's still technically stuck here until
third segment.
Yeah, we'll be getting there shortly. So that was obviously kids out of Alabama. They have not signed a kid from the state of Alabama since I believe they said 1981. So like, they're
damn.
This is gonna be it's gonna be a fight. But
yeah, you got to keep him.
You got to keep him. If he ends up deciding at the end of the day he's going to Alabama or Auburn or Georgia or wherever, LSU down there, I'm not going to cry over it. I don't. It seems like the way the Sanchez's are acting right now, I just think that's going to be a hard one to pull away from Ohio State.
I agree.
So like he just seems like that family just seems like they're so on board right now that this is just like, and you're liking where you're at with Dorian Brew. You're liking where you're at with a couple of the safeties. Obviously, you still got some young corners on the roster and stuff like that. This is just a cherry. Like, if somehow they could pull Devin Sanchez, this kid, and Dorian Brew and take 3 of the top 4 cornerbacks in the country, I mean, like, what are we doing here? I don't know what's going on.
And even if him being an SEC country. And I don't have the guy's name in front of me, so I do apologize. But, if they do lose him and then Dorian Brew, maybe he starts leaning towards Texas because he sees himself kind of like the third man in this class. There is a top 100 cornerback out of the state of Ohio also. I think it might be Galloway. I don't.
Yeah, it is Galloway.
Yeah,
because they've talked. So.
You still have options, and of course I don't want to say you fall back on a kid or anything like that, but I mean you do have another good cornerback out there. It's Dwayne Galloway, yeah, and so he's actually 190, or he's a top 200 kid, excuse me, but he's a good player.
Yeah, and like I said,
and he's in their backyard. He's a Columbus kid.
I mean, and right now the top safety in the country, a lot of people feel is going to commit to Ohio State, and obviously you got McNutt, who's in Ohio, legacy that, it just seems like that's a done deal, especially the way everything's trending right now, that, you might have thought prior to the season, some of these, or prior to just everything, that some of these other schools might have a shot at him. Maybe Michigan could, get him, with everything that was good that was going on up there. But as everything's kind of, happened there, which we probably should touch on just for a couple seconds, but we'll do that before we start the NCAA, Big Ten, SEC stuff. Just real quick there, we'll touch on some of that stuff. But all right, so just quickly to get into the press conference stuff. So obviously it's signing day. I remember, we're old, man. We are old. I remember when this was like the day. Like, there wasn't 2 signing days. There wasn't this December date. There's like,
I used to cross off work for this day.
I mean, there was times we actually took off work. this. Like, like called out sick at times. Like, I know, like, no, I remember in the day, especially when I got out of college and I was working and, you were still in school and stuff like that. And, and you'd be off on a Wednesday and I'm getting texts from you. It's like, all right, he's in, we got this signature. And I mean, you remember
Robert Kimdichie signs with Ole Miss at 8 a.m. Like, what?
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
Yeah. The Von Bell situation. It's like, I remember yelling at work. Like I was so excited. Like it's just, you don't get it anymore. Even like December, the December signing days, like, even though that's like where the bulk of them come in, it's just
but there's still no drama,
there's no anticlimactic now. Like it's just, I don't think people realize just how great the February signing day was. Because first of all, you had so many kids that were picking that day. That was the day they committed. But you also had, just in the 2 All-Star games, you had a bunch of people that were committing. Yeah. Like, so, and it's like, it's just, I don't know. It's a lot of luster got lost in some of that stuff. I hope some of this stuff gets fixed. December's just such a crazy month now, especially when you add the playoffs on top of it. I know some people floated out there. Why don't we do an August 1st, early August signing day to the kids that are, the kids that you definitely know are going to commit or sign, that they're already committed, they want to sign, let them sign in August, get that out of the way, and then February. Let's go back.
The August one, and we don't have to get into a long discussion about this. The thing that intrigues me about that is how does that impact their senior season? Like, excuse me. Are all the coaches like, are they really on board with that kid? They haven't seen them. I guess you don't take a lot of like chances in August. It just has to be kids that you are dead set sure on that they can sign. But even then, I mean, once you're signed with someone, I don't know how that impacts your last year. Do you give it your all? Do you sit out? Like, I don't know.
I think it would be, but I think it's going to be the kids that are really dedicated, because I think if you do it then, by doing it in December, all these kids' senior seasons are over, or the seasons are over, so they know where they're going. They just want to get the sign out of the way or whatever and just be done with that. Because a lot of them want to they're getting ready to go to school. Half of them are, so I think that, and I guess maybe that takes away some of that stuff that, if you want to go into classes early and stuff like that. So I mean, like if you're signing in February, you can't kind of already start school. So maybe you got to do it mid-January. I don't know. I just think they got to move it out of December, but that's just me. All right. So press conference. So, Dominic Kirk, so the signing day, but they did get him. So that's cool. He was originally committed to Washington. Everything happened there, and, got on Ohio State's radar. He's an Ohio kid, natural fit. They needed a defensive lineman. And so the good pickup for Ohio State. I mean, I'm definitely not going to argue that point. I mean, obviously a really good pickup, in my opinion, 4-star and stuff like that. I felt like he probably should have been with Ohio State the whole time, but that's just me. That I don't like seeing kids like that, like, committed to Washington. Like, I don't know, from Painesville. Like,
that one sucked. Yeah, it's like that's a backyard kid, man. Come on.
Yeah. So but at least they got him. A couple things I really liked, starting off with, I liked with the press conference. So Ryan Day talked about that Trey and Quinshon are both on board with the idea that they need to split carries. And I liked when Ryan Day admitted that, hey, next year, I mean, we can play 17 games next year. So I got to kind of, I got to be able to rotate kids, and I got to get more kids experience. And that was, if anybody's listened to us and other places too, it's like, it's been one of the things we've harped on a lot. Like, hey, man, you got to get some kids. I mean, you can't be signing the type of receiver classes you have and then only playing 3 of them in a game. Like there's got to be spots in there where you can get a couple more of the kids into the game, right? Broaden your rotations a little bit on some of this stuff. And, and I know a lot of people on some of the injuries blame Mick and stuff like that, but I've always kind of been on the other side. I'm like, I don't think Mick's doing anything different than he's always done. And actually, I think kind of when you listen to some of the people behind the lines, I think that I think he's pulled back some on some of this stuff. And, you know, maybe he does need to modernize a couple things. I'm not arguing that he doesn't, but I'm just like, no, I'm thinking the reason why they get so many injuries is because they're not rotating enough people in and out of the game. Like, you got enough good players on the team, you rotate them and let's get some other kids onto the field.
I can tell you, like, the human body didn't just stop, you know, uh, stop being able to respond to resistance and strength training and things like that. Like, I mean, Ohio State players, like, and we're not going to get into a big discussion of this, they don't look the same as when they did when they played for Urban Meyer. So unless they were taking steroids then, and I don't throw any accusations or anything, but, you know, unless they were on PEDs, like, it doesn't make any sense. You know, the body didn't just start being more susceptible to hamstring injuries because of that type of training. So I think it's a lazy argument to put it all on Mick, you know, when things aren't going with injuries for one, but when things aren't going the way just because I don't know, like, things are getting more modernized. Yes, you do got to get with the times. Absolutely. There is no doubt about that. But I mean, nothing's like, the human body hasn't changed since, you know, 80s, 90s. That's not going to break down easier because of the type of training Ohio State's going to do. If anything, it would become stronger and, you know, find a way to actually hold itself together more. So, I mean, if you want to start with the turf they're using, I think that's perfectly acceptable to start there. To go after, you know, mixed training, if he was doing the same thing he's always done, no, I mean, it might not be the most beneficial at the end of the day because, like we've said, you got to modernize it. You know, if you can make kids quicker by doing different things, that's fine. But I don't, that injury stuff, you could just lose me with that because I don't buy it personally.
Yeah. So I like on the rotation stuff. I think him admitting that to himself is a good thing. That's a positive thing. Another positive thing is that I love CJ Stroud. You see what CJ Stroud's doing in the NFL. Unbelievable. Just won offensive rookie of the year. I mean, the guy's a dude. I mean, you know, shame on the damn Buckeyes. You know, I'm not trying to get on a damn tangent, but if, you know, if they would have won the Big Ten this year, I would have won some money because I had the CJ Stroud offensive rookie of the year and the Buckeyes winning the Big Ten. And, you know, so it was the longer shot is the one I won on. And so but you know, that's digressing, I guess. Like, so I liked we've complained a lot that, you know, we need these guys to run a little bit more. And so Ryan Day was specifically asked that, and he's like, hey, I need a guys when we're playing in these big games, I need the defense to equate our quarterbacks in the running game. And that was a breath of fresh air because I think, like, I don't think he was necessarily ever against rushing quarterbacks because he obviously had Justin Fields, but obviously it's not what he prefers. And, you know, and I think he kind of realized that, you know, do I need to run them to death like JT Barrett was ran to death? No, but I need somebody who's going to be able to get 2 yards to put it into the end zone on a 4th and 2 or whatever, and you know, 4th and goal, and, you know, hey, am I going to hand it off to Quinshon Junkins or Trey Henderson, or am I going to power in myself? And I'm glad that he's come to that conclusion. And he said everybody on my staff has in my quarterback room has the ability to do that now. So I like that. And then when they bring in a guy like Chip Kelly, I even like it more because now I really think, like, okay, they're not going to be scared to do some of this stuff. You know, so all right.
Yeah. And that was really the only reason why I ever, like, was excited by the possibility of Dan Mullen because I think Dan Mullen would do wonders with Will Howard, but I think Chip Kelly can do just as well with them, and I do like what he can bring with the other guys also. So yeah, I think I agree with you. That's an exciting reason to add Chip Kelly.
Yeah. Obviously he had a lot of positive things to say about the, you know, the transfer portal, what they did there and stuff like that. But, you know, I think he brought and a lot of people were asking him questions like, you know, are you trying to be, you know, overly, was it's a change in philosophy this year at Ohio State? And he kind of pushed back a little bit against that. And when you kind of think about it, I kind of agree with some of his pushback on it, that it's not that necessarily they were being any more aggressive. I mean, the bigger news in the offseason was how many kids that they brought back. I mean, to me, that's still the biggest news. And he's like, Nick Saban retired. Like, I took 3 kids off of Alabama's team. One of them, yes, was prior to Saban retiring, but, they needed an extra offensive lineman. That made sense. Caleb Downs they finished number 2 to him. And in a lot of ways, if Jim Knowles was at Ohio State a year longer at that point, and there was more proven stuff with Ohio State, I think Caleb Downs probably would have picked them. And,
Saban's still a mastermind with defensive backs. So,
but we were so there that wasn't a big deal to me. And, Ohio State's Ohio State, Ryan Day is Ryan Day, and that just made a lot of sense too. And on the other ones, they brought in this quarterback or this tight end from Ohio that is a Kazmarek, I think. I can't remember how to pronounce his last name, but he was kind of a pandemic casualty. He couldn't really get on campus anywhere, so and it seems like they might have got a big time diamond in the rough with him. So I'm really excited about that kid. But he's, he was at Ohio. He wants to play big time college football, one of the Power 5 schools, and he's right down the road. So like that didn't seem like there was any far stretch of any of imagination of Ohio State getting him. And then Will Howard, obviously they probably needed an extra quarterback before McCourt transferred. They definitely needed a quarterback after McCourt transferred. So like that didn't, and I always knew they were going to go with a more veteran guy. So that only left Gabriel Leonard or Will Howard to me. They weren't going to go with, I didn't think Dante Moore made sense because that would have really blown up the room. Of course, then he ended up taking Sand, but I mean, it is what it is. But like, I understood why they made the point on Dante Moore, and choosing to go with a guy like Will Howard, like that. So that made complete sense to me. So part of me wants to say, like, I don't know how much more aggressive they're being. Maybe I kind of agree with them a little bit. I just think that they were able to re-sign basically their whole team or bring them back. And, they got some big time freshmen coming in that are already on campus. And man, he has a 17 game season possibly in front of him. And let's get a couple extra guys in here that, can help him out. I mean, you get a guy like Caleb Downs. I mean, this was an elite defense to begin with. That's only going to be better next year with everybody coming back. And now you just plug in Caleb Downs into that, and now you can possibly move Sonny Styles down. So, like, I just think I think he was probably right on some of that stuff.
No, I agree.
Yeah, so I think, and then just the last couple of things, just wanted to touch on just a couple of things that he said about, the coaching staff. Obviously, we still have, after Parker was fired, that's the one coach that, that hasn't been really replaced yet. So James has been on the road. There's been a lot of good buzz around that. You talk to some people, listen to a couple of the recruiting analysts. There's a lot of good buzz about James on there. It seems like Ryan Day is comfortable with that position. He said he's bouncing a couple things right now through his head. Probably by the end of this coming week, he'll have something. So I think if you kind of read between the lines, he's probably leaning on bringing in another defensive assistant. So whether that's James or they bring somebody else in, he
better bring in another defensive coach.
He did mention that possibly another special teams coordinator, which, but he mentioned himself running special teams and, with possibly the help of somebody else. And, honestly, if he brought in, whether it's James or another defensive assistant, and then he took over special teams and, somebody helped him else there, whether it's one of the 10 assistants or whether it's one of the, one of the non-10 assistants, I think that would be a really good idea. I think that would really be a good expansive thing for Day, and that, he could kind of see some other players, maybe come up with some other things. And that might actually, it could really tick a couple boxes for him and maybe get his creative juices could start flowing in some other spots that maybe if he's not calling offensive plays, like, maybe he can start doing some other things that maybe scratches that itch for him. So, I think that would be possibly, that would be a positive thing. I would be okay with that.
Yeah, I would love that. I mean, Ryan Day is a, fairly aggressive guy. And I know that can be debated in big game situations, but if he does want to make special teams, a baby of his and get a little bit more aggressive, take a little bit more risk while doing it, because that's one of my bigger hangups about Day, throughout his tenure. It's just like he's so just okay, content with fielding punts because he knows his offense is good, so he doesn't want to take a risk of dropping a punt and giving the ball back to the defense. Then instead he would rather just field a punt and march 80 yards or whatever it is, and more than that some of the time. And I would just love to try to unleash somebody and score a couple touchdowns or flip the field through the punt return game. So yeah.
And just like one last thing, just on the press conference, is that he did mention when he was talking about Caleb Downs is that, he returned punts and, he did throw that out there. He even talked about him possibly maybe even running the ball because he was a running back in high school. So if they find some weird, whatever, if they find things that can get him, the ball in his hand every now and then, that would be some interesting stuff. So yeah, maybe now if he's thinking about actually him taking over special teams, maybe now he'll want somebody out there that can actually return. Like if I'm going to be in charge, I want to see return punts. If I'm going to be the one calling the returns and stuff like that. So that would be kind of interesting. That
for sure.
That. So I thought it was a good press conference. I mean, man, he gave a whole hour. I mean, he had just a bunch of stuff. I mean, not a lot of. Not a lot of fluff or anything like that. I mean, I was impressed that he did give that much time, especially when the whole O'Brien stuff was up in there. I mean, he could kind of push that off possibly another week, and let's let this other assistant come in and stuff like that. So, kudos to him. That I think that obviously this is a big off season. And I mean, he mentioned some stuff about spring, how they're going to divvy up the quarterback. Rotation and stuff like that, and so, but I mean, we'll talk some more about that as they get closer to spring, because we'll have we'll have another press conference probably before then, and he'll probably have a better idea how they're actually going to do some of that stuff. All right, let's get into some of the just quickly on the Michigan stuff. So Jim Harbaugh obviously took the Los Angeles job. He took the Los Angeles job after our last show, right? It wasn't prior to our last show. I don't remember now.
It was after.
Okay, so and then he's now poached a lot of Michigan's staff. I mean, basically, it seems like the whole defensive staff is gone. He obviously took to their strength coach. My biggest issue with that, a lot of people are just like, oh, he's poaching everybody from him and stuff like that. I think the biggest FU that he kind of gave to him was taking the strength coach, because strength coaches in the NFL and college are two different positions. Like a lot of people, like it doesn't seem like this would be the case. And some people are going to think it's like, no, that can't be true. But strength coaches tend to make more money in college than they do in the pros, because, they are much more beneficial to their programs in college, because you're basically building high school kids into, NFL players for,
right.
If you think about it in a lot of ways. And once you get to the league, it's like, there's
a lot of them have personal trainers.
Yeah. In the off season, there's no, like, most of them are off doing their own thing. They know what they have to do to stay in shape and stuff like this. They all have personal trainers. So you do some lifting during the season and stuff like that, but it's not like what it is in college, where basically the strength coach, if you kind of think the strength coach is the off-season head coach. I mean, he's in charge of the team.
Right.
And like, so, I mean, because in in college, like they're only allowed having so many hours with the players, the coaches. So I mean, he's basically is when they're in an off season. So he's pretty much in charge of everything until except spring practice and then season time. And so I think that was like kind of the biggest slap in the face to Michigan. That he could have picked the others. He could have took one of his assistant strength coaches and been like, "You stay at Michigan because you're more valuable here, and I'm going to take this guy because I just got to plug in somebody that knows what they're doing to be an NFL strength coach."
Well, Mike, all I gotta say or ask is, does the NCAA have subpoena power?
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of this stuff is coming from.
You don't have to cooperate if you're no longer employed by the team being investigated.
Yeah. It's just the one situation. I don't know. I think so much of this stuff it's already known ahead of time that I don't know how much the cooperation really matters, but it might
We don't. No one knows. Well,
it might matter. It might matter more on the first go around stuff, the stuff that happened during the pandemic season. That maybe that some of that stuff, the whole cheeseburger, cheeseburger in paradise up there in Michigan. That maybe that helps them there and stuff. Some of this stuff with this year, depending on what comes down on it, I mean, a lot of that stuff was fed by the other schools, so I don't really know how much. I mean, I'm sure there's some instances where that affects it not having coaches to be able to cooperate, but I don't know. But just kind of weird that he took the strength coach. Like I understood Mentor, like I was crazy. Seattle took Harbaugh's kid, but
yeah, I know. I mean, take the D-line coach though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They hired Wink Martindale today as their defensive coordinator. So I mean, he's obviously a known commodity. He's been around the league for a minute. A lot of McDonald and Minter's stuff from Baltimore comes from some of his philosophies that's in there. So I think that they're both better than him. I think that they expanded some of his things. I mean, I thought he was kind of lackluster at times in the NFL, but that's just me. I think that Mike McDonald and Minter, added some really good stuff to some of that defense that's modernized it a little bit. But that's again my opinion on that. So it'll be interesting to see how some of that stuff goes.
Sure.
All right, NCAA. So SEC, so obviously when we first started this podcast, we did the super conferencing. It's something that we've talked about very much in private, way before we even started the podcast. And it's been poo-pooed by a lot of people. They're never going to do a super conference. They're never going to do a super conference. But you kind of always look at the fact that as you see how college football was starting to change, and I've always been kind of the impression that, I'm like, changes are always slow until they start really speeding up. And I'm like, and once they start speeding up, and then it feels like a freight train. And we're in the freight train mode right now. I mean, people never thought you were going to get the transfer portal, NIL, all this different stuff. And then like literally it all started happening together. And we went from having no playoffs to 14 playoffs to a 12-team playoff within a decade of the 14 playoff. And, who knows how that's going to expand to it, if that expands further. So we've always said there's going to be some sort of bifurcation of the big boys in college football from kind of the rest. Didn't know how necessary was going to do it. Probably on our next show, unless some stuff really breaks next week. I think we're going to break down some of the old stuff that we talked about in the Super League and just kind of talk about it's a fun off-season topic that, we're kind of in this stretch now where, we got a couple weeks till spring. And so you could say it's a filler, but, it's definitely coming to fruition in a lot of ways. So we'll get more into the specifics, the nitty gritty, probably on the next thing. But the next episode, it was just the SEC and the Big Ten. They came out and they're like, yeah, it's not an alliance, but it is a working group, and they are forming a working group with each other because there's a lot of big questions going on in college football. And finally, where it's not ever been the NCAA, finally somebody is coming out and be like, yeah, we got to kind of get ahead of this stuff. So there's a lot of this stuff. There's a lot of court cases going on right now. Let me just put it. One of those court cases is possibly a lot of back pay to a lot of NCAA students, athletes, that if they get that back pay. So, I mean, that's billions of dollars. That's first thing. And I think that's the big one. That is the one that I think right now the SEC and the Big Ten are like, we have to get in front of that lawsuit because NCAA is going to lose that lawsuit. Like, I don't think anybody who thinks that saw the Supreme Court decision from a couple of years ago that they went 9-0 and they basically spanked the NCAA from here to tomorrow, and you don't think that's going to come out. That's not coming out favorably for the NCAA. I mean, they basically warned the NCAA at that thing that, like, hey, we're not going to necessarily go as far as we can go, but you guys got to start cleaning up your act. And, like, if you understand politics in this country and the Supreme Court, like 9-0 decisions are rare, very few and far between. When they agree on something, it's usually not great for the party that they're going against. So they're going to come down on the NCAA. Like, they're going to lose every one of these court cases that deal with that back pay thing. And they think if they're going to appeal it all the way up to the Supreme Court and they're going to win it at the Supreme Court, they're not. So, like, and I don't know what that is. There's going to be, usually when there's these types of lawsuits, big torts and stuff like that, the party that loses, they come to some sort of agreement, they set up a fund, and that's where the back pay and all that stuff comes in. That's how lawsuits are usually dealt with in this country. And I think the SEC and the Big Ten, they realize that that's coming to support, that's coming down the line. So they're going to start looking how they're going to pool resources. They're going to start trying to figure some stuff out. I could see them setting up a fund of their own, that, hey, when we lose this decision, at least we will have our fund in place that the old SEC and the old Big Ten players that are going to come for the money, we will already have that in place and ready to go. Yeah. And I think they're going to come up with something. They're going to come up with a payment mechanism that, going forward, because that's where we're going now. I mean, college athletes are getting paid. I mean, especially the big players. We are at the stage now that they are going to become employees. And this is no longer, I mean, obviously courts can take a while, but this is no longer a 20-year process. This is going to happen in the next 5 years. And, possibly sooner. I don't know how all that stuff works out. It's just, I think that they realize that they have all the money right now from the contracts, the big TV contracts, and there's going to be some sort of revenue sharing right now between the schools and the players, and NIL is still going to be on top of that. So I think a lot of these big questions, the SEC and the Big Ten are going to work together and stuff like that. And I think that they'll probably try to ultimately what I think they're going to, I don't think they're going to do a full breakaway. I think what they want to do is, like, they want to bring in a few more schools to both conferences of who they want to keep, whether that's Florida State, Clemson, the Notre Dames. I mean, everybody knows who's still out there that is worth any, salt right now. And I think they're going to want to go to the NCAA and be like, hey, we have these 40 teams. We want to create a super division. Let us create a super division. We'll still keep it within the NCAA framework. Like, nobody wants to get together and rewrite all the rules of college football. I mean, like, that's like, they might say, hey, we're going to do a couple different rules. Like, you guys aren't going to come down as hard as us as on NIL and stuff like that, because, that stuff's allowed up here. We're paying our athletes and stuff like that. And then everything below that, the NCAA will have much more of a hand in and stuff like that. But, and you guys figure that out. You guys figure out how you guys are going to do compensation and stuff like that, because I think compensation at those levels will look differently. And, in some of those levels, the scholarship might be all that you're going to get for compensation. But it's just, I think when you get up to this big level, that this is changing. And I think that for the first time ever, that I think, and it's kind of funny, Sankey was on with Paul Feinbaum this week, and he even mentioned, he's like, hey, I went to Warren last year or 2 years ago, and he basically told me to F off pretty much. He didn't want to work with us. And, so I like the fact that it seems like Tony Petitti is much more forward thinking. And, I know a lot of people get upset about the changing of college football and stuff like that, and I get it. There's things that I don't like about it either. It does for everyone else, but I still love the sport, and I think that there is going to be some sort of privatization, professionalization coming out of these big schools, and I don't know necessarily how that looks like, but it's going to happen, and it's change. It's change that was bound to happen. I mean, when you look how much money these schools are signing these major TV deals, and how much is and yeah, scholarships, that used to be a great thing to ride home on. Trust me, I went to college, you went to college, we would have loved to have been like, here's a free education, but at the same time, here's a free education, but I'm making billions of dollars and you're making nothing, even though you're doing all the hard work. And I think that we were just coming to this point, and this was bound to happen.
Yeah, and my opinion on it, and I mean, I'd love to see how this plays out, and I don't know, I'll think more on it and see how this opinion evolves. But I also do think, I mean, this is kind of to get a little bit more control back into the hands of,
and I agree with that too.
The school, of the conference. I mean, they're not gonna. They want to do this because they see how the game is changing, how just the sport, the climate is changing around it, and I think they want to rein it in a little bit. And if that means sharing, profit with the players, they'll be okay with that. If that takes it away from just, crazy Uncle Terry or the oil tycoons, decided that they want to go buy a team, like they're not going to let that happen. So I think ultimately it's going to be good for the sport. I mean, I know it's kind of steering into the skid, but it's going to help get a little bit more control than what we have out there. I mean, that's just like, there's no rules on transfers anymore. There's no rules about, these collectives or boosters finding, legal ways to, for pay to play. And it's just, I think they want to make some resolutions to that. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's where we're going. I don't think that's ultimately what I thought of, what the Super League was going to be.
Yeah.
But I think that these two conferences see where it's going, and they realize they got to get out in front of it to get a little bit, more control, or whatever it may be, whatever the reason may be. But that's kind of the catalyst that's pushing this the way that it's going. But yeah. I agree with you. I think it's going to be 5 or sooner.
Yeah. So I think we were definitely right with the Super League. I think we always understood that it was going to be some sort of NFL style, and it seems like it's going to be North versus South or whatever. That it's kind of the Big Ten and the SEC. That you kind of think of it. That's the AFC, NFC now, right. And it's kind of like a way, and they'll play games against, mainly against their conference, and they'll probably have a couple games every season against, the other conference, and then you'll have the playoffs. And so I think that's where we got things definitely right. Where I think we got things wrong, probably, and we'll break this down more, is when we first did this a couple years ago, I never imagined what the transfer portal was going to look like today.
Or NIL. We didn't realize what was actually going to push this. I think, excuse me, we thought about this just in the spirit of the game, what was going to make the most competitive football, and it was just, that's the way college football was growing, and people wanted an NFL style, but we didn't realize what actually was going to be the root cause to get here.
Yeah. And so, like, where I'm kind of like thinking that's different now is that I think instead of kind of scholarships, I mean, even though I think their education is going to be paid for as part of them being at the school, but instead of having a 4-year scholarship, I think You're going to get signed for like I think where they're going to try to cut back transfer portals, like, this is how much money we're going to pay you. Here's a 2-year contract. And after 2 years, you're eligible to re-sign for another 2 years or another year or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can go take your options and go somewhere else. And that's a joint thing. Being like, hey, I think you would be better at another school. And, I mean, thank you for your 2 years of service, but it didn't work out on our end. And as the player gets to say the thing too. Like, you signed me for this amount of money. I'm doing this much production, this school, I'm going to go test my waters at one of the other schools that could possibly pay me a little bit more. And, I know some people have joked around that we're going to have salary caps. I don't think we're going to necessarily have a salary cap because I don't know how you do that with the NIL stuff. And I do think the way I think it is going to be, they're going to know how much money they bring in with all the TV deals, and they're going to make a percentage, 40% of the expenses get paid for, and then whatever is left over, 40% of that goes to the players, 60% of that goes to the school. It's going to be similar to how the NFL does it with kind of the TV deals and the merchandising. And I think kind of the NIL will then come into the schools, and the NIL will be like, Marvin Harrison is getting $2 million a year, or we'll say $500,000 a year from Ohio State as part of his TV thing. But, I'm somebody's car dealership down in Columbus, or, I'm this Kroger or whoever, whatever big Ohio company, and I want to pay Marvin Harrison $1 million. So I give my $1 million, I give it to Ohio State. Ohio State gets it to him. I think that's where the extra incentives come from. That so I think everybody kind of across the board will get paid similar money that's on the team, and then the NIL money will come in, and
what it should have been.
Yeah, to the university. I donate it to the university. I say I want my $1 million to go to Marvin Harrison. All right, here's Marvin Harrison's $1 million, and as long as it's not one of the businesses that are not allowed to be, then they do what they do. And so I think so. Yeah, I don't think the transfer portal has just been like nuts the last couple of years. I mean, if you would have said 2 years ago, 3 years ago that a guy who still has eligibility left as the starting quarterback at Ohio State is just going to go, like I would have said, there's like, you're smoking crack. Like
Right.
I don't know how else to say it. Like, that's crazy to me to even think of. And I get it. He didn't have guarantees but that's still unheard of. Like, it's like,
no, I know, like returning starter, and he leaves, man.
Yeah, so I just think we didn't know necessarily how it was going to get to this point. We just knew that I think we had the kind of the final idea how it's going to be, and obviously some of the teams we picked at back then, because we kind of looked at like a mixture of the blue bloods and the big brands, and maybe a couple of smaller schools in there that have been like big hits recently. We kind of threw them in there, and obviously it's going to be different, and I think we didn't think of everything as like the 5 Power 5 conference, even though that was kind of like the basis of all the teams were coming out of the Power 5. But obviously schools like Indiana and Rutgers, I don't think we included any of those schools.
No, they weren't in.
And we're in this situation, like they are the kid that gets bullied on that ended up getting the really cool friends and didn't get bullied on anymore. And like I don't know how else to put it. Like, it's
I believe you would say riding coattails.
Yeah, I guess that's the more PC way of putting it. So, yeah, but they got lucky. The Rutgers of the world got lucky. The Oregon States of the world, not so much. So
they did not.
So that's kind of like just what I was thinking. Like I said, we'll probably get more into some of this stuff as we go. Obviously, this just started. We don't know necessarily all the details, but listening to what Sankey said on Feinbaum the other day, and then, it's a couple of the things I was reading, what Petiti said, they are taking this extremely serious, and they understand that they're the big schools right now. They're the big conferences, and and you kind of saw that this week with the vote, some of the votes, and like some of the stuff that we're trying to do with the playoff stuff. I mean, they are definitely, both of them are very, very much against the idea that the Pac-12 should still have, a automatic berth, which I completely 100% agree with. I don't know how two schools can get an automatic berth,
Right.
but like how they're even in that discussion. But like, you know, it seems like it seems like that they are kind of like to the point, being like, why don't we just say that the 12 teams are just coming from our two conferences, so that, the rest of you guys just go do what you guys got to do.
Yeah, do your own culture. We don't care.
Like, have fun at it. But, and honestly, when you think about gambling and all this other stuff that's now goes, so you saw how popular college football was this year. There's money still to be made for the other schools. Like, the schools that don't make this thing, like, ESPN's still going to need to fill time slots. Fox is still going to need to fill time slots. I mean, all these networks love live sports, and however they get those live sports, it might not be the money that it once was, but there will be money to be made there. And and the degenerates, the gamblers, us people that are on FanDuel and DraftKings, like myself all the time, that yeah, I might take some of that action every now and then, throw it in on parlay.
I don't got enough money to gamble.
Yeah, no, I don't really neither, but so I don't know. I think I I just always think that this is going to make college football better. Like, you're going to have kind of two really good conferences that you can watch a lot of two different divisions that you can watch a lot of good football. And I'm still going to watch some of the other football. I don't care.
Oh, yeah.
I love watching football. This stuff's awesome to me. That, yeah, I'll watch Oklahoma State play freaking, Houston or whatever, and have a good old time watching. It'll be on the TV. It's like they're on now too, and yeah, and some of those games can get mixed in through the weeks. And okay, what's better than watching a nice Big 12 game that's on a Wednesday? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Football is not going to go anywhere. I mean, it's not just going to be Big Ten, SEC. Like, there's still going to be interest in other places in the country, but I don't know. I don't see how we're not going that direction.
And maybe in those divisions, kind of like what a lot of people love about college football will still be there. You're going to get a lot of regional games and a lot of fun. And like I said, I'm going to still watch it. I know a lot of people are still going to watch it and stuff like that. And yeah, you might not be competing for the big national championship, but a school like Oklahoma State, I don't know why they're the ones stuck in my head, but Oklahoma State might go out and win a national title because they're not in that. Like,
Right.
they like a school like that, maybe Boise, all those years, like we talked about Boise State Cinderella and stuff like that. Boise State could go win a national title now. That's cool. Like, that's fun. I watched the crap ton of Boise State over the years because they were a fun football team, and like, it was fun. And I don't see where the issue with this is. Let's pull the big schools out that are making all the money and stuff like that. That's where that stuff was going, and let's make a competitive middle division that's in between the this top echelon league and one division, the FBS or the FCS schools, whatever. And get rid of the bowl games. They should all be playoffs across the board. No more bowl games. So let's have the 12-team playoff at the upper level, maybe a 24-team playoff in this middle level. I don't know. I mean,
it probably would be more competitive. It's not going to be like, if you take out the Big Ten and the SEC, I mean, you're probably going to have more teams that are capable of winning a national title in that field.
Yeah, and so you'll take away, and there will be a couple more schools will join. Clemson and Florida State, and those schools will end up in the upper division, and Notre Dame. But you could you might get a Pitt national champion. Okay, Pitt used to win national titles at different times and stuff like that, and they have a fan base. So yeah, I'm all about that stuff. So let's do it.
Okay. Very good.
All right, so I think we'll call it a night with that. Just wanted to thank all of our loyal listeners and people who watch us on YouTube, and just keep on chugging along with us. We got some kind of some big news in the pipeline. That's we're probably another week or two away from hopefully I'll announce it hopefully by the next show. But so we're excited about that and the future of our show. And like I said, we just appreciate all the people that have been on this journey with us. So let's get on out of here for tonight.
Well, yep. Thank you everyone for stopping in tonight to the Buckeye Bar. I'm John.
I'm Mike.
OH.
IO.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's Buckeye Bar Guys on Buckeye Bar Talk. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that all notifications bell so you see when new content is added, and please remember to like and share so we can grow our audience. Don't be afraid to comment. We want to know what you're thinking, and we want to know what content to add for you guys. OH.
IO.